this panel. As you know, this panel is is a presentation of the story, the development of a work group within O.I.B.R activities of managing work groups. As Alessandro said this morning, one of the tasks of the foundation is just to mobilize stakeholders in order to face issues related to the aims and scope of the O.I.B.R and try to make a reflection and also make proposals and guidelines and tools, if possible, in order to be useful for practice. And this is one of the results of this one of the work group that was on the Sustainable Development Goals on Performance Measurement Systems. So I skip this one. Of course, the topic, as you know, is one of the most challenging today for companies. The SDGs represents the deployment within the three main pillars of sustainability: the economic perspective, the social perspective, and the environmental perspective of 17 goals that have been agreed upon 2015 by 193 countries, and that should be reached within 2030, hopefully. But what is important for us is the consideration that this kind of targets and indicators are defined mainly at the micro level of countries and nations, and so there is one problem: how to deploy this kind of targets within organization, people, companies, so that they can be feasible and understandable and manageable by this organization. And of course, companies are very much involved in this issue. We have here an example of the 17 SDGs relating to industry innovation. As you can see, there are targets and indicators that are mostly related to a macro level as the possibility to measure and to be defined the reaching of the target. So the problem for the companies and the problem that we are facing in our work group is just related to how to overcome the problem that has been also analyzed in research by consulting companies, but also by academics, that highlight how, although on SDGs companies speak about and cite in their external report, but if we go to see if they measure the possibility and the performance with respect to these kind of targets, we don't find so much results. So there is an open issue in this respect, and in order to face this problem, and in order to try to experiment a possibility to find solution empirically on this issue, in O.I.B.R has been created a work group. It was coordinated by myself and by EIASM Interdisciplinary that is here. We are both involved in the scientific committee of the O.I.B.R, president, vice president, and we involved in O.I.B.R. We find the interest of being involved by 6 companies, 2 manufacturers, one in the aeronautic sector, one in transport, one in wholesale and retail, and one big financial company, bank, corporate investment banking, All they were interested. There was a very mixed group in terms of sectors and in terms of dimension also of the companies. There are big companies, but also medium-sized companies. So there was also the possibility to exchange different situations, different problems by the participant of the group. The objectives of the group in a broad sense were just to identify possible best practices for the integration and communication of SDGs with respect to the problem of the integration into the performance measurement system. So an internal perspective of how this kind of target and measures for this target could be inserted into the information system of the companies in order to become part of the management and control system. Also make an experimentation into the group, pilots in order to see if this is possible and apply this within pilot case study. And at the end, all the aims of this kind of work group is to try to draw down what guidelines that can be useful for the other stakeholders and in general for the general public and interested in these topics so that it can be useful for the generality of stakeholders. We spent some time in order to define what kind of object could be focused, because as you can understand there could be several potential areas in which this kind of issue can be developed and studied and also try to give an answer. And among the companies, two aspects, two dimensions were particularly interested in. One is the problem of investment in SDGs, in the sense that how the SDGs targets and metrics can be defined and considered within the problem of investment assessment, monitoring and reporting. So all the different phases, this decision making, the management and the reporting about investments. Also with the aspect of the financing perspective that of course is included into this issue, because of course banks are very much interested in order to orient their investment towards sustainable investments. And the other one was about supply chain, guidelines to help integrating into company supply chain things and indicators linked to SDGs. This presentation is focused on the first one of the topic and explain what were the aims and the result that we have get up to now. Within this aim of the investment evaluation, there were three main expected results. The first one, try to find a methodology, an approach that considered the processes, the organizational involvements and issues related to the possibility to define the right targets of SDGs for the investments and how to integrate in the decision-making process for the investment chosen. In this respect, this could bring to the definition of the qualitative and quantitative financial and financial indicators. Here, the ambitious aim is just to integrate the traditional approach to investment decision making, mostly financial, and to give ideas and some possible approaches in order to for the best consideration of SDGs issues in this decision. Here, an important point is the addressing of the 5 dimensions of impact management as one of a point of reference in order to integrate the approach to investment decision in the perspective of the consideration of SDGs target, and we will see later on. Then, of course, the idea to validate the metrics, looking from both perspective of the corporate that has to make investment, but also for the financial perspective, given that in the group there was also a bank, and so the bank could give the perspective of the lenders in this respect, and we know that it is very important. It has been also mentioned this morning. We developed this in 4 working package. The work has been split in one year, more than 1 year, because there was a preliminary phase just to define what we wanted to do precisely, that it was not so clear at the very beginning. And then after the decision about the focus and the objects, we could then go on with the work more in a more planning perspective. So the 4 working package work package include the identification of the investments as a pilot studies where to focus on, the identification of the indicators and the potential indicators, and we will see that there were a lot of potential key measures that could be useful. Then a critical assessment in order to select about this data set of potential measure, what can be considered by the companies more relevant in order to be used for the investment, and then the final selection and the presentation of the data set in the final part. So now Serena will go on, starting with the work package 1, and let's go into.
Yeah. Thank you, Lino, and good afternoon to everybody. Well, as Lino said, our first objective was to develop a methodology. So we will delve into the different phases from a methodological point of view. After our presentation, there will be Caterina Balbo from ASPIAC service, and we will also, she will present an example of the methodology we have developed. As Lino said, the first phase concerned the identification of the investment, of the pilot investment by the companies, and of the SDGs targets which are associated to these investments. All the companies, and we will see selected the pilot investments they were going to analyze, and we all work together in order to define the SDGs targets which are associated to these investments, and also we will see the indicators which are suitable for their measurement. In this phase, there was a very tricky point because we not only identified the pilot investment and the SDGs targets which are associated with this pilot investment, but we tried also to identify if the impact of the investment on the SDG target is a direct impact or an indirect impact or an impact which, let's say, is uncertain. What we meant by direct impact. A direct impact is an impact which happens when the variation of the outcome which is associated with the SDG target strictly depends on the investment. As an example, if a company invests on electric cars and in charging infrastructure, this has a direct impact on the sustainable and affordable energy. Whereas when we have an indirect impact, when, let's say, the variation of the outcome which is associated with the SDG target, it doesn't strictly depend on the investment, but is somehow unlocked by the investment. Again, an example. For instance, if a company invests in a new store or in a new building, in a new sustainable building, let's say, and in this building work people and gender equality plans are adopted, then this means that this investment has an influence on the adoption of gender equality plans. But at the same time, this influence is indirect, because the company already adopts these policies. And then the uncertain impact is when, let's say, the variation of the outcome has so many causes that it is impossible to identify a single cause as the main cause. So this was the most, let's say, thinking point of this phase. As Lino said, we had 5 companies and so 5 pilot investments. I will go very quickly through them, but only to highlight that they were very different investments. We had Aspiat Service, who is going also to present later, with the opening of a new supermarket and renovation of a store. Diadora, with sustainable mobility, electric cars and charging infrastructure. Ferrovie dello Stato, with the purchase of new trains of new generation. Izzini Illuminazioni with the contest, lighting design contest, and also Leonardo with the contest, the Leonardo drone contest. And as you see, this was the first phase, so we identified the pilot investments and the SDGs targets which are associated with this investment. The financial institution monitored this phase, but all the process in order to provide the financial institution perspective. After this first phase, we had the second phase, and in this phase we identified the indicators which can be related to the SDGs targets. We built a very long and let's say integrated and wide list of indicators that can be linked to the pilot investments. And in order to identify the possible indicators which could be linked to the SDGs targets for each investment, we draw from the main standards and frameworks, and especially the GRI, the SASB, and EIASM. I will go very quickly on these frameworks we used. EIASM was really very important, and we will see how important EIASM has been let's say, during all the process, all the development process. Not only because in EIASM we could find indicators associated with different SDGs targets, but also because these indicators can be related to 5 dimensions of impact, which are the 5 dimensions which we used in order to thoroughly understand the impact of the investments. Then we also used the GRI metrics, which are associated to the SDGs targets. And also, when possible, we used also the metrics which are provided by sectorial standards by SASB. At the end, we identified for each investment a list, a very long and wide list of indicators, and these indicators could be used to understand the impact, let's say, of the investment. Just to give you an example, we developed a worksheet template which the companies used, and this is only an example, and it is an example from Trenitalia. For instance, here the company had to identify the goal. Then we have the target related to the goal, which is the target related to the investment, then the description of the target, and the type of impact. So if it is an impact which the investment has is direct, indirect, or uncertain. In this case, for instance, with the goal 9 and the target, which was upgrade infrastructure and retrofit the industry to make them sustainable, the impact was a direct impact. And then we had a list of indicators drawn from IRIS+, SASB, and also GRI, which could be used in order to, let's say, measure this impact. And this list was a list of quantitative indicators, as Lino said, qualitative indicators, also descriptions were sometimes suggested. At the end of this phase, we had a long list of indicators. So the problem was to select this long list of indicators, because we always have to to recall our first objective, which was to identify a list of indicators which could express the impact of a certain investment on SDGs. So we made what we call the critical assessment of the indicators. That is to say that we associated to each indicator, and we tried to identify for each indicator, first of all, the dimension of impact of these indicators. So the dimension of impact that these indicators was able to express, and I will explain later. Then the relevance of this indicator for expressing the impact of the investment. And another important aspect was the calculability. We have to remember that our objective was to give companies an instrument to be used. So the calculability was essential, because we found that there were very interesting and relevant indicators, but there were no information within the companies to calculate them. So all the indicators were selected according to these 3 criteria. As I said before, the key, let's say, for understanding and for studying and for analyzing the impact of the investment is given by the 5 dimensions of impact. What we meant by the 5 dimensions of impact? We meant that an investment, let's say the impact of an investment on SDGs, should be expressed by indicators that are able to illustrate, for instance, the what, which means the outcome that this investment is able to provide, the who, the stakeholders which are influenced by this investment, and then how many stakeholders, for instance, are influenced by the investment, or also the degree of the change they experience thanks to this investment. And then also indicators which are able to express the contribution of the investment, which means the contribution that the investment is able to give, and which is something which will not be in other ways. That is to say, if the investment is not done. And at the end, indicators expressing the risk. That is to say, the likelihood that the impact could be different than expected. These 2 last dimensions of impact were the most difficult to find and to be expressed by the indicators. Then we have the last phase.
Yes, in the last phase, thanks to the great job, big job made before, there was the final selection of the indicators, so that in the group we decided just to identify the maximum 5 indicators for each impact dimension, if possible, so that to limit the final number of indicators selected. And now we are working on the final report, and then there will be the tentative guidelines and the definition of the usable templates. That particularly it has been shown in this spreadsheet that summarize the dimensions of analysis that have been considered during the workflow of the process in the work group. According with the explanation of the different phases that we have done, at the end of the work package 3, we have added other 3 columns related to the relevance, the dimension of impact that the indicator can better be aligned with, and the calculability of the indicator. Here, one of the problems is that most of indicators are more related to the company as a whole than possibly to the specific investment. This is also one issue that in this kind of analysis we found. So, at the end, then Katia Della Valle will explain in the case of O.I.B.R more in detail an exemplification of the final practice result. In the end, very quickly about the conclusions, here the effort has been just to find, as we said, new possible perspective of analysis of investment, just useful in order to solve the problem of how to integrate SDGs targets and measurement into the definition of the decision-making process. And what we have found and the open issues that remain from this experience are some aspects that have been mentioned by Serena before. When we look at make a reflection about the impact, and one of the problems is that in some cases you have the possibility to define a lot of effects, relation of cause and effects between investment and the potential impact. So one of the problems is just the decision about how to stop this reasoning, this analysis. And in this respect, what we have found as the distinction between direct impact, indirect impact, and uncertain impact may help in order to focus more on some of the potential impacts of an investment more than on others. There are difficulties in quantification, as was previously said, and sometimes there are some indicators that can be associated to different impact dimension. We have found that not always is possible to cover with indicators all the 5 dimensions of impacts. Some of these dimensions are more easy to be covered by indicators, others are more difficult to quantify, or even sometimes to describe in qualitative terms. Also, if qualitative approach is one important possibility, and it's for sure usable together with a quantitative definition of KPI, and there is also the perspective of the lender that has to be considered, and in this respect, here we have the problem that the lender has more an attention to KPI related to ESGs that are more oriented to define a company-wide perspective of sustainability more than a specific investment perspective of sustainability. There is also the problem how to build up the indicators that can be useful in terms of different sectors. So this is also an issue that has come out often in the group, that they need to have reference of indicator more related to the specific sectors in which they work, with the possibility to use for their investments. And there is the open of translation on financial impact in financial numbers. That is still an important aspect in investment evaluation, but this is one part that, if possible, we will try to develop in a second part of the work group. These are measurement and reporting issues. There are, finally, also some strategy and management issues. Here, we would like to address the aspect that what we have understood in facing this problem with companies is the fact that if we want to find a solution, there is the need to activate a discussion, a dialogue, a reflection into the companies, because the kind of the problem needs to be discussed in order to have the possibility to find a possible solution to the question. In this sense, the possibility to solve the problem by automatic or mechanical process, in our view, is not a good solution. Also because this approach is the approach that probably is that make the company, the organization reflect and embed the issue of sustainability in deciding about the investment to make. So if we want to also change the culture of managers into companies, this approach can be considered also useful in order to activate a mobilization of organization, reflection on these topics. There are the problematicity of the multiple viewpoints that are present. We know, and also this morning we've seen that there are relevant actors that are present in order to, in the definition of these measures, companies, lenders, the problem of the compliance that also is related to this aspect of investment related to European directives, the problem of impact and risks that has to be carefully considered. This is what we would like to share in this experience that we have carried out thanks to O.I.B.R. And now I would like that Katia Della Valle. Katia, are you online?
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, Katia Della Valle, which is the director of the control department of ASPIAG DESPAR, which is a retailer in Italy and also, say, in Europe. Just to give us some hints about the experience of you personally and for your company about the process that we have tried to explain. You can share your presentation if you have. Wish.
Yes, just a moment.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As Lino said, I'm Katia Della Valle and I work in the controlling department of ASPIAG Service, which is one of the company who took part of this working group of O.I.B.R. ASPIAG Service is an Italian company that operates in the modern retail industry. Here you can see some main highlights for 2021. Here you can see our main highlights and the logo of our brand. We have the license to use this brand only for Italian regions that are Veneto, Trentino Alto Adige, Friuli Venezia Giulia, Emilia Romagna, and also Lombardia. We will open the first store in Lombardia at the end of this year. At the end of 2021, ASPIAG manages 250 direct retail stores and supplies 320 franchise retail stores. through 4 regional headquarters and 10 logistic platforms. The supermarkets had 3 particular signs that are the SPAR, EUROSPAR, and InterSPAR. Aspian is a part of the European SPAR Austria group. SPAR Austria has the license of the brand SPAR in the Austrian country, and it is also an European group which operates also in European countries such as Hungary, Slovenia, and Croatia. And it is our parent company since 1970. In Italy, the SPAR brand is managed by Desperate Italia Consortium, which manages the brand and also the branded products, and it is formed by 6 independent retailers, the main of which is Aspect Service. Internationally, the brand is managed by SPAR International, which operates in 50 countries. We had the pleasure to participate in this O.I.B.R working group, and I will give some experience from my point of view. First of all, we had 2 pilot investments. The one was the opening of a new retail stores, for which we choose as a material topic the quality jobs, because when we open a new retail stores, we create a number of new jobs and so employment. And the second pilot investment was about the renovation of a retail stores, for which we choose as material topic the climate change mitigation, because in such investments we invest a lot of money in the renovation of installation or in systems that are more efficient. So we first of all adopted the EIASM Plus Impact Management project, and so this approach was very useful because it was a guide to define the outcome to be measured. It was also a verification of the correspondence to the hypothesized SDGs. Here you can see some, SDGs 7, 8, and 13. And it was also a detailed grid to go in deep detail to very specific particular of this kind of assessment. But it was also too much detailed, so it lacked of a synthesis of this kind of project, and we can say that it was more uninformative than a management tool. We made also one-to-one meetings with the academic colleagues, as they mentioned, and we followed the different working packages that they have already described. First of all, we selected from the goals the specific targets that were relevant to the 2 pilot investments that we had. And so, for example, here you can see 3 examples. We specified the reason why certain type of targets were selected instead of others. And we describe also the type of impact, as Serena has already explained. So direct, indirect, or uncertain. For example, for target 7.3, it has a direct impact on the 2 pilot investment because it refers to the system installed in the new stores that are every time more energy efficient. The second target, 11.6, has an indirect type of impact because it refers to waste management, that is a service that occurs in every of our stores, not only in the stores involved in the 2 pilot investments. And then we have target 15.1 that has an uncertain type of impact because it was too general to relate it to our 2 pilot investment. At the end of this consideration, this first phase, we focused only on targets that has a direct impact to our 2 investments involved. Then we made other considerations, so we, with the academic colleagues, added these columns related to indicators so specific KPIs coming from different sources, so SASP, RS+, GRI, and so on. And I can say that our database were very huge. But to make the other selection to our database, we added these 3 columns about the relevance, impact dimension, which refers to the 5 impact dimensions that we have already seen, and the calculability. So, for example, we have example number 1 about the percentage of renewable energy, and example number 3 about the employee turnover rate that has yes as a relevance, because they are directly linked to our 2 pilot investments, the first in the renovation and the third in the new opening of a store. As impact dimension, we brought both because they refer to the outcome that we had to measure, to report, and the calculability was yes because we had at our disposal specific KPIs, not at a corporate level, but at the store level that was the object of our investment. Here you can see the second example, which KPI is related to after-sale client support, which was no relevance because not relevant because this is a service that we offer in any case, not only in the store's object of this investment. And then at least we have this KPI related to greenhouse gas emission of products that were relevant because related to the renovation of a new retail stores, with the impact dimension related contribution, so we had to report the greenhouse gases before and after the investment involved, but the calculability was low because we have not data about greenhouse gases emission of products. We have them at corporate level or store level. So we, after all the consideration, we had a huge database, but we have also this tool to make the selection necessary. So we arrived to a short list that we, and from this short list, we considered also the financial point of view of the bank that participated in this working group, and so we shortlisted the final selection of KPIs. We can see here 5 KPIs for the opening of new retail stores and 6 KPIs for the renovation of the retail stores. And these KPIs, and so the related SDG targets, are related to these final SDGs, so SDG 7, 8, 9, and 13. From this experience, what can I say? I think that it is very important to pay attention to the choice of the material topics at the beginning of this journey, because from this it will influence all the SDG target KPIs selection and also consideration. Reporting, because when it is requested, it is not a corporate reporting, but it is an individual investment reporting. So you have to have at the disposal data about your specific investments. In our case, we had the data about the specific store involved in this project. The KPIs involved in this project have a huge number, but it can be simplified because they are huge, because they come from different sources, HC, IX+, GRI, SASP, and so on. But if you look at the substance of these KPIs, you can see that they are very similar. So you can keep just the KPIs that you need. These KPIs are quantitative, but in some cases you have to add also a qualitative description about them or about the methodology to correctly understand these kind of KPIs. And last, I can say that this is an experimental approach, so all the steps that we followed were not systemized any kind of programs, but I think that will be a great opportunity for the future. I will thank you for your attention, and if you have answered questions, I will be glad to answer.
Okay. So this is the material that we have packaged in order to present, to make this panel. If there are questions, of course, we are here. Maybe some minutes more before the coffee break. I would just say that, as Katja said, there are. It has been a journey, a complex journey, in which we have tried to define a possible path, organizational and I would say methodological mostly. Of course, the possibility to have some part of this process automatized, for instance, for the selection of the creation of the database of the wool indicators.
Because you haven't paid.
No time. Time is over.
Time is over. It's automatized.
Yeah, and then so this is the effect of automations, and could make. Of course, the time in order to close the process in presence of some automatized part for the selection of indicators, etc., could be lower, but for sure there is the need to devote time in order to discuss and reflect over which can be the possible and best choice in order to solve the issue. I would like to underline this because in my view it is important also to have this experience also for an experience of maturity and the development as a culture of sustainability into the companies. Anyway, you have a question? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you said, Lino, that you have a second stream of research with the first one and the second one. And do you think that you would face also the second stream?
When?
Well, okay, this is the answer.
No.
Okay, let's say that we developed the first part together, so well, we are very interested in also, let's say, also embrace this new challenge, which is a big challenge because it's a new stream which is related to the to try somehow, we don't know exactly how, to analyze the impact of an investment not only from a quantitative, qualitative point of view and non-financial indicators, but also from the financial point of view. And so we are thinking of continuing this stream after we have finished this project, which will be finished by the end of the year. So when we have consolidated the results of this first part, we can also face the second one.
We would like to make first a webinar for O.I.B.R on this, and then we will go on for deepening the possibility to have also a financial analysis, sustainability oriented, to be associated with this kind of metrics.
And I will assure a double amount of money.
Okay. Okay, then taken.
Honestly,
thanks so much.
Okay, so thank you very much. And